Before the cake was a lie, before llama llama duck, even before this is my boomstick. Before all these, the in-joke among nerds was a single number, 42. If you're not already laughing, then let me bring you up to speed on the science fiction comedy series known as The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. The series began as a radio show in 1976 and was later adapted by Douglas Adams to a trilogy of 5 books, a TV series in 1981, an adventure video game in 1984, and eventually a comic book and a movie. To say this series was given legs is an understatement. One thing that remained consistent about the series as it moved from medium to medium was its inconsistency. Douglas Adams never seemed to care that what happened in one telling of the story happened in the next. He also never seemed to be concerned about deadlines. He once said, "I love deadlines. I love the whooshing sound they make as they fly by." What Douglas Adams was a wordsmith, doing things with text that Shakespeare never did. I realized this 3 chapters into the first book when he described the floating alien ships hanging in the sky in much the same way that bricks don't. I literally put the book down, stared into the room I was in, and said, whoa. And I have been a fan ever since. So much so that I decided that when the 2003 movie came out, owing to the fact that Douglas Adams was never consistent with his own work, I would like it no matter what the writers did to it. And I did manage to like the movie for a solid 24 hours after I saw it. I really tried, but that was all I could manage. Douglas Adams' glacial writing pace meant that when he died, he left behind a legacy of unfinished ideas for the next book in the series. Some of these ideas were published as is in a collection called Salmon of Doubt, but it wasn't a completed novel. There was only one way to ever see that. Someone else needed to pick up the pieces for the fans, but could anyone ever fill the gap left by the late, great Mr. Adams? Then the prolific Eoin Colfer stepped up to the table, and the deck was stacked against him from the start. Could anyone who cranks out more books in the first decade of his career than Douglas Adams wrote in his entire life ever compare? Plus, Eoin is Irish, and British humor I'm pretty sure is genetic. At least he wasn't American, but it didn't bode well. Still, I was determined to give Eoin's contribution to the series at least a fair shake. He had Douglas Adams' notes to work from, so as far as the story arc goes and what happened to the characters, I shouldn't be able to complain, theoretically. Despite myself, I spent most of the first few chapters thinking, well, it ain't old D.A., that's for sure. Not only did the writing lack Douglas Adams' distinctive brand of cleverness, but a number of little narrative choices made me raise my eyebrows, like severing one of Zaphod Beeblebrox's heads and putting it in a flying glass ball, or taking Wowbanger, a throwaway character from the 3rd book, a running gag basically, and handing him a very significant role. And then there was the frequent interruptions by the Hitchhiker's Guide entries. With Douglas Adams' books, they were seamlessly woven into the narrative or relegated to footnotes. Sometimes a half page of footnotes. But Eoin plops these asides jarringly between paragraphs in the middle of the page and literally floods the text with them. Niggling aside, eventually the book settles down. The narrative has the characters facing absurd mortal danger and improbable interpersonal conflicts, and eventually it feels like the story is at least taking place in the same universe as the previous books. Then it ends and everyone lives ironically ever after, just as it should. I'm really fighting the urge here to be an insufferable fanboy and actually recommend the book to fans of the series, but it's really difficult. If you're not a fan of the series, this isn't a good place to start, so I can say this isn't for you, but I do strongly recommend you pick up the original books and enjoy. I can say without question that And Another Thing was considerably more tolerable than the 2003 movie, but it's hardly on par with the original series. It's more on par with a work of fan fiction. But I expect more from a professionally published novel than a work of fan fiction. I knew unrealistic expectations weren't going to let me enjoy this book, and I tried to lower my expectations accordingly, but it fell short even of these lowered expectations. I think if you're a fan, you should check it out from the library and read it. It's got some good points, but it won't be joining the collected works of Douglas Adams on my shelf.